Hey guys, welcome to another Brandable Minute. So we're going to talk about how to brand yourself, and this one is actually very simple. And so as you guys know, so I'm using my little black book to express and to explain some of the notes and things that I've done over the years when it comes to branding and storytelling. And it's getting a little bit more nuanced because now I'm coming across either personal things or just very detailed pieces that deal with either projects, like specific projects, because I've written those out, or pieces of the anti-hero project that I was building out. So now I got to figure out how to frame this so that it becomes more appropriate for, or useful, I should say, more valuable for you versus me just kind of reading out some things that may kind of feel disjointed. So I have to kind of build a narrative around some of this stuff, remember where I was so that I can help to, fill in the gaps for us. But this one is easy. So there's going to be kind of some not too much of this, but there's going to be some jumping around. I was really ideally wanting to be chronological with this whole process, and I think it's still possible, but we'll see, because this is just really how my mind, how my mind was operating during that time. So this was actually from almost for about 4.5 years ago, actually, when I wrote this. Now, remember, branding is a set of stories, memories, relationships, expectations that causes someone who would be a customer, a client, to choose your product or service over somebody else's time and time again. How do you turn that? How do you make that into you branding yourself? I'm pretty sure there are many books that are out there. I am not the aficionado. All I'm doing with this process is just sharing and showing what I've done to come across and to understand what it is to be a brand person, a design person. I have the capacity to research and all of that and be very calculated. That's not what this is about. Okay. So if you're looking for very detailed and primary, secondary sources, and I encourage you to look at other videos. This is really just one person sharing their personal experience of their own natural process, taking all of the stuff that they have researched at one point, that they've read, that they've watched, and just now doing it practically. So this is what one of these things are. Branding yourself looks like this. So this is a statement that I've mentioned, not mentioned, that I actually have written. I don't know if you can see that there. It says, I want to become a UX designer. These are very interesting. And the reason why I think this is interesting, remember, this is about 4.5 years ago, is because when you look back at where you were and what you're trying to do and just the thought process, it really can help you to just refocus, looking at the North Star that you might have established or that you might have discovered long ago. Okay, so I want to become a UX designer because my natural creative process already incorporates most, if not all, of the UCD, that's user-centered design, techniques. And then I put in parentheses, maybe everyone's does, right? Maybe everyone has these things. But then I put, and now I want to be more intentional with my creativity, my communication, ability to research, analyze, and connect. So for connect here, it wasn't connecting with people as much as it was connecting ideas. I put a star. I also have this intuition of how things, software, hardware, etc. It doesn't have to be computer based. It could be, doors, it could be whatever it is. So I also have this intuition of how things should, underline that, be designed if it was poorly created. I want to make things easier, simpler, clearer, and more approachable for people to use. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark. 2 stars now. So I put two not asterisks, actually stars next to this one. I also believe UX can be used in shame recovery. Ellipsis. Okay. So let me tell you why this is important for me. Remember, branding is the set of stories, expectations, memories. This is a memory. To an extent, it's kind of like a story. Remember, we talked about how you create scenes and storytelling. There has to be a desire for the character, the protagonist, and then there has to be an obstacle. There are some obstacles that have come across this because as I'm looking back at this, I'm like, wow, what have I done? What have been the obstacles, the roadmap to actually get to this person? Well, over the last few years, and this is important, this is how you begin to brand yourself. Because now I'm going to tell you some stories and some experiences that allow you to understand how I've shaped what I've declared years ago. So this is before me actually getting the position to become to work as in the behavioral health field years ago when I was in New York, and realizing how important it was to really get to um, understand the UX side of the health tools that we were using, the EHR tools that we were using, and I didn't realize it then. Obviously, I wasn't even looking for that job then, but months later, after I graduated, uh, that's the first job that I got. As soon as I literally, like the next day that I graduated, I started the position, helping people who are chronically mentally ill. And one of the things that was frustrating for me was the software. And I said to myself, man, if the software was just designed a little bit better, I'd be more efficient at my job. Because a lot of us who are in that field, you spend more time not paper pushing, but doing a lot of the paper stuff, right? Versus actually connecting with the people when you're in the direct care side of things. So anyway, that being said, I'm looking at this whole idea of shame recovery, and that's the big picture. The big picture for me was creating the Antihero Project so that individuals who have gone through a shaming experience, individuals who have made poor decisions, leaders who have misappropriated their gifts or their talents, and now they're in a rut, could be able to, through a user experience design process, something that would be built, and we're still there, guys. Let me tell you why, would be able to come out of that. So the anti-hero's journey was created, right? So I created that paradigm. But here's another thing, though, that happened. I ended up focusing more on healthcare, especially after doing the brief stint in the behavioral health position that I was in. I was just there for a year, and long story short, I realized if I really want to help individuals in healthcare, I got to know a little bit more about it. So my thinking was do an MBA, get to understand the business side, the bureaucracy side. As a matter of fact, that's one of the last courses that I'm taking this semester before I finish this thing. Finish that, understand how the nuances of healthcare are so complicated, have a newfound respect for the people who are working in this field. You were too, but from another side, from the other side, from the operational, from the strategic side, to realize how difficult and perhaps how nuanced, maybe not how difficult, but it is difficult, complicated, sophisticated it is to really try to help people in the system. That was part of the obstacle, right? That was part of the challenge of just bridging the gap between user experience and healthcare to be able to one day mesh the two together. But the process isn't done, guys. There is yet more room to grow and to do research so that I would be able to really refine the process, the research process of what shame resilience is all about. Personal development, personal branding, reframing somebody's narrative. That's why I was really interested into branding so much, guys. I mean, it was part of the process. It was me graduating or transitioning, not graduating, but transitioning from copywriting to wanting to do something a little bit more deeper and systemic. And that's where branding came into play. And then wanting to branch out even more and understand the overarching capacity in which branding would be successful, which is where strategy kind of just fell into my lap. And now it's okay, well, how do you do all of that? What do you do with all of that? It has to apply to something. So for me, the application is healthcare. In what capacity specifically, don't fully know that yet. But what I do know is I wrote something down, and that's important. I wrote something down that allowed me to remember where I was, what I was thinking, what the passion behind it. And not everything has to be passionate, right? Go find your passion. I'm ambivalent towards that. Sometimes you just work hard enough and you develop the passion as you work deep into it. Cal Newton, right, talks about that. But what I'm saying is this. You create your brand, your personal brand, by first starting out with a declaration. Who do you want to become? What do you want to pursue? Start there. Don't try to make it complicated. Oh, what's the story that I need to create in order for me to be? Don't worry about all of that. What has been an experience? What has been a milestone moment that you said, you know what, this is what I want to do. This is who I want to become. Will it change? Yes, it will evolve. But I can almost guarantee you that it's not going to shift that much. I really don't think that it's going to be so dramatic where you reinvent yourself so dramatically that you just become an entirely different person. I I really don't think that that's the case, guys. I think that if you get to the heart of who you want to be and what you have been driven to do, that no matter what capacity you end up in, whether if it's like for me, if it's healthcare or if it's me doing management consulting, because I'm finishing an MBA, and that could be a path as well. Your core of who you like, what you're driven to do, I really think that that's gonna stay the same, guys. So hey, listen, if you have any questions, feel free, drop it in the comments, or I would love for these engagements that I'm doing, especially live, to be more constructive, from a constructivism approach, meaning we can build the meaning together versus me just talking and you listening like it's a lecture. Feel free to connect and just to reach out, because here's what I think, guys. I really think that if you are able to brand yourself by just declaring what you want to do, who you want to become, it can't be about money. It cannot be about money, guys. Money is just a byproduct. Everything that I wrote here, did you see it? Like, I read it. I said that I want to be a UX designer because I want to help make processes simpler, easier, fun for people to use. How do you deploy that, Chris? Healthcare. You go to any .gov website right now and you talk to anybody who's a designer, web or whatever, and they are frustrated with how a lot of our public sites, or public meaning government sites, are just so bleh. It's just difficult. Have any of you, when you were going online to get your, I think it's either your like the payment protection application that you had to do, or receiving the what was it, the emergency fund that we got because of COVID-19. It was a disastrous process. It almost reflected what it was in real life, where like you go to the DMV and you're waiting in line, and the people that are behind the desk are taking their sweet time because they know, listen, this is a 9 to 5. I'm just here buying my time. The websites acted in the same way, where we were in literally a virtual line. I saw myself here and the process was here, and almost having to wait 45 minutes. It's crazy. Now, why am I saying all of that? I'm saying that because that is my passion. I cringe every time I go to like Medicaid.gov and see how much content is on there, and it's not even navigable for the person who is yes, thank you, Ted. The stimulus package. I can realize why I can remember that, and it's crazy how there's just all of this. The language and the words are so overly complicated. It doesn't have to be that way, guys. For me, and that's where my passion, that's where my desire comes in. Okay, so how do you brand yourself? Think about it. I just read to you something that I wrote down 4 years ago. This is before I took a UX certification. This is before any of that. I'm almost certain that some of you have something like that tucked away, written down somewhere. Go find it. And if you don't have it, do it today. So that 4 years from now, you can look back and say, wow, you know what? That's true. That's what I wanted to be. That is part of your brand. You write the narrative now. You write the story now. You write the declaration now so that you can remember it. And also to begin to expect that of yourself. That's what branding is about. It's almost like you making, not even almost, we talked about branding being a promise. Well, that's what it is. You are writing a promise to yourself of who you want to become. And if ever you are off the mark, you can always go back to that thing, or maybe even stumble across it like I did. I forgot that I even wrote this, guys. I was still in New York at the time. So writing that and then coming back, you're like, wow, where am I now? And I can say with assurance that I am on the right path. It might have taken longer, at least for me, but I had no idea. I didn't even conceive of doing another degree, another graduate degree since I've written this down. But that's what happened. And it's because of somehow in your, sometimes, I don't know, in your subconscious, you're talking about what you're gonna do, and eventually you just end up doing it. Now, there's a caveat. I also had a life plan that was written out that I also forgot about. There are so many constructs and things that we have that we can use. Um, yeah. So okay, actually, you know what I should actually do? I can actually put this up. I realized I could do that. Listen, Ted, like it's the same thing, right? Where you said that you're not too far off from what you want to do when you're in high school. I agree, man. I agree. Like I think that you can't be that far off, right? Like when you really think about who you are. And I think that that's why some of the greatest brands, even if they reinvent themselves, it's not about the logo. The logo may change, but Google is still Google. A brand is not a logo. I don't know if we talked about that. Maybe we talk about that tomorrow. A brand is not a logo. So the logo can shift. You can have new clothes on. You can change your look, but your memories, expectations, stories, and relationships that you have built over the years, those will stay the same unless you have to dramatically change your story, dramatically change your relationships. And maybe some of us need to, right? Maybe some of us need to totally reinvent ourselves. But the most successful brands have established themselves for years so that even if they are shifting or changing, they're not doing it overnight. I think that that's what social media has also caused us to do and to realize, wow, I just forgot this is a brandable minute, not a but hey, that's okay. Social media has caused us to realize or to feel like we can just switch up everything overnight, be a different person, change the avatar, and everything is different. And that's not really the case. I mean, it can be, but that's not what real life is about. Real life is about trying your best. Are there certain relationships, connections that you need to sever and move on from? Yes. But in general, I don't think that the what Cal Newton calls the career capital, the stuff that you've built over the years, you just throw that away. At one point, I used to think that, yeah, just not, I didn't think that, you should just throw it all away, but to just start fresh, sometimes you just need to start over with nothing. No, I really think that that stuff can be used. My man Ted just said, listen, since high school, there's some things that were, me too, Ted. Like we were working on Photoshop and doing all kind of, design stuff back in school. This stuff is still there, right? Like it's still innate. So I still had a desire for design, even when I didn't understand or realize what user experience design was. I wasn't even introduced to UX design until 2014. But somewhere, somehow, because of nature, nurture, the stuff that were cultivated in from school, the stuff that we learned, and just stuff that came natural, those are the things that ended up becoming who we are today. That's part of your brand. Okay. So I guess what I should say is just don't kill your brand. Don't kill off the stuff that makes you you. You are who you. I'll give you one last one. So Will Smith actually talked about what made him today was because of the relationship dynamic of his family. And so the reason why he has, been so comedic and, the for lack of a better word, the joyful person, the one that always wants to see people happy when he's around, is because of the abusive relationship that his father had to his mother. And so he felt that if he could just be that person who can distract all of that from happening, then his mom would be safe. And so he goes back and he said it. He said it in, I think it was a Red Table Talk. He was, dealing with uh, Janet Hubert and their own dynamic on Fresh Prince back in the day, and just the hurt that needed to be healed and all of that. The point is this: he says he even sees it in his own family, or when he's in certain circles where he goes back to that little boy dynamic of wanting to make sure everybody's fine, everybody's pleased, he's approved of when he's in family or close friend circles, and that's. But here's the thing: he knows how to differentiate the two, and I think he said he's still working on that. But the point is, that's really part of his makeup now, right? That's part of who he is, not the negative side, but the part of him that not the one that feels like he has to be the court jester in order for everybody to feel okay, but the other side of the charismatic side, the ability to make people feel comfortable. There are two sides, right? Branding has a bright side and a dark side, and he's chosen to really fall into and to embrace the bright side. Sometimes the dark side happens, and that is the side that Janet Hubert and they had to work out, because that's a whole nother story for another time. But he has a brand. He's had a brand for a very long time. Whether shortfalls or whether shadows, whether weaknesses to it, of course there were. But the point is, he is who he is because of just the way that he grew up, his family dynamics, all of that made him who he is. And he chose not to. I mean, he could have maybe, right? But he chose not to try to throw those things away. I would even say, this is the last thing, I would even say that as much as you would try to throw those things away, you can't. You cannot try to do away with some of the stuff that makes you you. Somehow, some way, in some situation, it's going to come out. It is inevitable. You embrace those things. I think for the longest, I probably have tried to do that as well. Maybe, I'm not sure. Perhaps I have. But eventually you become miserable, you become bitter, you just don't become the you who you were supposed to be. So embrace who you are. Embrace your brand. So how do you brand yourself? You write out, what do you want to become? What do you see yourself as? What has been something that has really irked or made you frustrated that you want to fix, that you want to change? And it may not even be something big. It can be something very small. That's okay. The biggest idea started off with a small solution, a small fix to a problem that was just irking somebody. And then somebody else came in and joined in, and somebody else joined in, somebody invested, and it just became a huge idea. Don't worry about the huge idea. Focus on you. What do you expect to happen? What do you expect from yourself? Who do you want to become? All right. Yeah. I was going to say something else, but we're going to leave this 20 minutes. See you guys in the next Brandable Minute.